The void of space was not black. It was a deep, bruised purple, smeared with the light of nebulae that looked close enough to touch, but were 1,000 lifetimes away. Jack Harrison stared into it, his eyes feeling gritty from recycled air and too many hours on watch. His ship, the Earth Defense Force Avenger Mark IV, smelled faintly of ozone and old coffee. It was a relic, a tin can held together by stubbornness and patches. Beside him, his co-pilot, Ben, was nervously tapping his fingers on a console that had been declared obsolete 20 years ago. "They shifted formation again," Ben muttered, his voice tight. "Quadrant 4. They did not even bother to notify us." Jack sighed, his hands moving over the controls with an economy of motion that looked lazy, but was, in fact, an expression of profound boredom. "Why would they? Ben, we are the help. We are the noisy little cousins they have to let tag along to the adult party. Just match velocity. Try not to bump into their pretty, expensive hulls." This was the future. Humanity had reached for the stars, only to find the stars already occupied by civilizations that viewed Earth as a quaint, slightly primitive backwater. The great interstellar empires, like the Zilth, were vast, powerful, and engaged in cosmic struggles for resources that made Earth's entire history look like a playground squabble. Earth was not a player. It was, at best, a minor supplier, offering up minerals and auxiliary forces in exchange for not being casually conquered. Jack Harrison was one of those auxiliary forces. He was, by any measure, the best pilot in Earth's tiny fleet. He could make the Avenger do things its designers never intended. He had an intuitive feel for zero-gravity physics, a sixth sense for energy flux. And he hated it. He hated the attention. He hated the expectations. All he had ever wanted was a quiet posting, monitoring shipping lanes, preferably with a good book and a functional coffee synthesizer. Instead, his special skills had landed him on this mission, flying support for a Zilth diplomatic convoy navigating the contested buffer zones. A milk run, they called it. "I just do not like how quiet it is," Ben said, scanning the sensor readings. The Zilth ships were crystalline needles of light, impossibly sleek, moving with a grace that defied their immense size. Jack's Avenger felt like a brick wallowing in their wake. "It is always quiet before it gets loud," Jack said, his gaze drifting to the navigation panel. The Zilth had adjusted their projected jump corridor for the third time in an hour, forcing him to recalculate the energy dynamics. He hated this console. The touchscreens were sticky. The diagnostic panel had a flicker that gave him a headache. He reached for the lukewarm bulb of synthetic coffee floating by his shoulder. His other hand moved to input the new coordinates. At that exact moment, the lead Zilth cruiser engaged its pre-jump engines. A wave of spatial distortion, negligible to the Zilth shields, washed over the Avenger. The ship bucked hard. Jack's hand slipped. His coffee bulb went spinning, spraying brown liquid across the viewport. His gauntlet, meant to tap the navigation screen, slammed 3 inches to the left, striking a small, dark, and almost never used button. It was recessed, covered by a safety cap that had broken off 6 months ago and never been replaced. A light flashed on the console. It was not a red warning light. It was a deep, ominous blue. A synthesized voice, calm and polite, spoke from the dashboard. "Cascade sequence initiated. Bypassing all safety authorizations. Emergency spatial fold in 10 seconds. Ben's head snapped around. What? What is a cascade sequence? Jack's blood ran cold. He knew what it was. It was a theoretical protocol. A blind salvation jump designed to tear a ship out of a catastrophic event. Like a collapsing star or a black hole. It did not calculate a destination. It just left. It was a 1 in a billion panic button. No, 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 Jack hissed, his fingers flying across the console, trying to input the abort code. "Cancel abort sequence abort," the voice replied, still terrifyingly calm. "Abort command not recognized. Safety protocols bypassed." "Pull the core," Ben yelled, his voice cracking. "No time." Jack grabbed the manual steering yoke, a futile gesture. 3, 2, 1. The universe outside the viewport did not stretch. It tore. It shattered into a million pieces of colored glass, and then snapped back into focus on a scene of pure, unadulterated chaos. They were no longer in the quiet buffer zone. The bruised purple of space was gone, replaced by a blinding theater of war. Hundreds of ships, all bearing the angular, predatory design of the Zilth Empire, were engaged in a ferocious battle. Green lances of particle energy tore through the blackness. Explosions bloomed like fractured diamonds, silent and terrible. Jack's sensors screamed, a high-pitched wail of active targeting locks and overwhelming energy signatures. "Ben, where are we?" Jack yelled, fighting the controls as his ship tumbled from the violent exit. "I do not know. Ratings are off the chart. This looks like the Zilth home fleet. They are fighting each other." Jack's stomach turned to ice water. He had not just jumped into the wrong coordinates. He had jumped into a civil war. His small, primitive Avenger was immediately identified. Red targeting brackets swarmed his navigation display. He was in the middle, caught between two massive formations. "Evasive," he shouted, more to himself than to Ben. He slammed the thrusters, sending the Avenger into a desperate dive. He saw it then. A squadron of sleek, black Zilth destroyers, part of the attacking fleet, was ignoring the larger capital ships. They were making a fast, suicidal run toward the largest vessel on the field, a ship that could only be a flagship. It was immense, an orbiting cathedral of crystal and gold, regal and terrifying. The destroyers were firing everything they had, focused entirely on overwhelming its shields. "They are trying to cut the head off the snake," Jack breathed, and he was directly in their path. "I am locked! I am locked!" Ben screamed, his hands frozen over the shield controls. Jack did not have time to think. He only had time to react. He saw the trajectory of the enemy torpedoes. He saw the closing speed of the destroyers. He had no weapons that could scratch their paint. He had no shields that could withstand their fire. He had only one option. A maneuver he had practiced in simulators. A maneuver his instructors had called unnecessarily reckless and indicative of a deep-seated lack of respect for authority. "Hold on," Jack said. His voice was suddenly calm. He jammed the port thrusters forward and the starboard thrusters into reverse. Simultaneously, he hit the emergency coolant flush for the main engines. The Avenger spun wildly, like a discus thrown by a god. As it spun, it vented its entire supply of super-chilled engine coolant into the vacuum. The liquid flash froze, instantly expanding into a massive, glittering cloud of razor-sharp ice crystals, directly in the path of the attacking squadron. From the Zilth flagship, it looked like a stroke of tactical genius. A tiny, unknown ship had deployed a perfect, three-dimensional defensive screen. For the destroyers, it was catastrophic. They flew blind into the cloud at full attack speed. Their sensors were instantly blinded by the ice. The microscopic crystals were ingested by their maneuvering thrusters, choking them. The first destroyer tried to reverse power, only to have its port engine explode. It careened sideways, slamming into its wingman. A third ship, trying to evade the collision, pitched up and exposed its unshielded belly to the flagship's point defense cannons, which vaporized it instantly. In the span of 5 seconds, the entire assassination squadron was annihilated, victims of a chain reaction of collisions and friendly fire, all caused by a desperate pilot flushing his radiator. Inside the Avenger, Jack was fighting to regain control. The ship was spinning, alarms were blaring, and the hull was groaning. Ben was pale, gripping the dashboard. "Did we do that?" Ben whispered, watching the debris field form. "I was just trying not to get hit," Jack panted, finally neutralizing the spin. The good news was that the enemy ships were destroyed. The bad news was that every other ship in the area now had him targeted. The worst news was that his engines were completely offline, overheating from the coolant flush. He was dead in the space, a sitting duck. "Well," Jack said, leaning his head back against the seat. "This is it. Court-martial if I am lucky. Vaporization if I am not. I should have been a baker. Bakers do not get tractored into alien civil wars." He glanced down at his uniform. A large, dark coffee stain was spreading across his chest. Perfect. A powerful, undeniable force gripped the Avenger. It was not a weapon. It was a tractor beam, precise and overwhelming. It was pulling them, not toward the attacking fleet, but toward the massive, golden flagship he had just accidentally saved. The journey into the hangar bay was terrifying. The ship was colossal. Jack felt like a fly being drawn into a spider's web. The bay doors closed, atmosphere hissed in, and massive mechanical arms clamped onto his ship. "We are not dead," Ben said, his voice trembling. "Do not celebrate yet," Jack muttered. "We have just been captured by the other side. They probably want to give us a medal before they execute us for scratching their paint." The canopy hissed open. The air in the hangar smelled like activated static and something metallic, like fresh rain on stone. Two figures were waiting for them. They were not figures. They were giants, at least 8 feet tall, encased in gleaming, iridescent armor that seemed to be made of living metal. They carried weapons that looked impossibly complex. "Pilot of the unknown vessel," one of them boomed, his voice running through a translator that made it sound like crumbling rocks. "You will come with us. The Empress will see you." Jack and Ben were marched out of the hangar, through corridors that felt more like canyons. The Zilth architecture was all soaring arches and glowing crystals. There were no wires, no pipes, just smooth, pulsing light. They passed hundreds of Zilth soldiers, all of whom stopped to stare at the two small, disheveled humans. Jack tried to look dignified. He felt ridiculous. He was short, his uniform was stained, and he desperately needed a shave. They entered the bridge. It was not a bridge. It was a cathedral. A panoramic dome of crystal showed the battle raging outside, though it seemed to be quieting down, the attacking fleet pulling back in disarray. In the center of the room, on a throne that seemed carved from a single diamond, sat the Empress. Empress Jaren was, in a word, terrifying. She was tall, even for a Zilth. She wore articulated golden armor that seemed more ceremonial than functional. But Jack had no doubt it was deadly. Her skin was a pale, pearlescent white, and her eyes were like polished obsidian. She was beautiful in the way a supernova is beautiful, something to be admired from a very, very safe distance. Her face was a mask of controlled fury, clearly stressed from the battle. Standing beside her was a male Zilth. His armor, a matte black, scarred from what looked like actual combat. His face was sharp, predatory. He glared at Jack with open contempt. This, Jack sensed, was a dangerous man. "The Terran," the black-armored general sneered. His translated voice was a low growl. "Empress, this is an absurdity. He is an auxiliary. He stumbled into our fight. His ship is archaic." "General Calrex," the Empress said, her voice cutting through the tension like a razor. "His stumble just saved this command ship. And my life. Your own fighters failed to intercept the Vanguard." Calrex's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Empress Jaren rose from her throne. The sound of her armor moving was like faint chimes. She glided down the steps, stopping directly in front of Jack. She was at least 2 feet taller than him. She studied him, her black eyes dissecting him. Jack fought the urge to shuffle his feet. "You," she said. "The pilot. Explain your maneuver. The crystalline cloud. It is not in any known tactical manual." Jack swallowed. His translator was feeding him her words, and he hoped his was working in reverse. "Your Majesty, It was not a maneuver. It was an engine flush. The coolant lines were cracked. I was just trying to stop an overload." There was a pause as the Zilth on the bridge listened to the translation. General Calrex actually snorted. But the Empress did not laugh. Her translator, apparently, was far more generous. Or perhaps it was programmed to interpret everything in a martial context. A smooth, synthesized voice echoed from Jaren's armor. "He claims he invoked the engine purge, a strategic release of superionized plasma to create a sensor refractive kill zone. A bold and self-sacrificial gambit." Jack blinked. "What? No. I mean, I was just trying to get away." The Empress's translator hummed again. "He confirms. His objective was to disengage the enemy vanguard by luring them into his pre-planned trap." "This is not going well," Ben whispered behind him. "You think," Jack hissed back. General Calrex stepped forward. "Empress Jaren, this is madness. He is a primitive. Look at him. He is clearly terrified. He got lucky. Let us dispose of him and his crewmen and focus on the battle. The traitor's fleet is retreating. But they will be back." Jaren held up a hand, silencing the general. She looked at Jack, and for the first time, Jack saw something other than anger in her eyes. It was calculation, desperation. She was in trouble. The Civil War was real. The attack on her flagship had been too close. She had traitors in her own fleet. Calrex's barely concealed ambition was proof enough of that. Her previous Supreme Commander was likely the one who had orchestrated the attack. She needed someone loyal. More than that, she needed someone unpredictable. Someone outside the suffocating structure of Zilth politics. Someone the traitors would not see coming. And most of all, the soldiers on the bridge had seen what happened. They saw a tiny, ancient ship perform a ghost maneuver and destroy an entire squadron of elite destroyers. The Zilth were a superstitious, martial race. They saw an omen. Jaren's gaze hardened. The decision made. She turned from Jack and faced the hundreds of officers on her bridge. "General Calrex, your failure to anticipate the direct assault on my person has been noted. Your strategies are predictable. Your enemy knows how you think." Calrex's face turned white with rage. "But the universe," Jaren continued, her voice ringing with newfound power, "has provided a solution, an unexpected variable." She turned, her armored finger pointing directly at Jack Harrison. Jack felt his stomach drop. He instinctively tried to wipe the coffee stain off his uniform. "Pilot of Earth." Jaren's voice boomed, amplified throughout the bridge. "Your actions today, your unorthodox and brilliant tactics, have proven your worth. The old commander, Valerius, is dead, a victim of his own treason, destroyed in the very trap he set for me." She strode back to her throne and gestured to Jack, as if presenting him to the crowd. "By the ancient Zilth rites of combat and salvation, he who saves the life of the Empress in battle assumes the mantle of her protector. I name you his successor. I name you the new head of my fleet." Jack's mouth went dry. He looked at Ben. Ben looked like he was going to be sick. Jack looked back at the Empress, and he pointed a trembling finger at his own chest. "Me," Jaren smiled, a cold, sharp expression. "Rise, Jack Harrison of Earth. Rise as Supreme Commander of the Imperial Empress's fleet." For a second, there was absolute silence. Jack could hear his own heartbeat. His knees felt weak. He suddenly had a desperate urge to find a restroom. "Supreme Commander." He was not qualified to command a shuttle bus into the orbit. He hit the wrong button. He was flushing the radiator. Then General Calrex, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred, slammed his fist into his own chest. It was a salute. One by one, every other officer on the bridge, hundreds of 8-foot-tall alien warriors, turned to Jack Harrison and slammed their fists against their iridescent armor. The sound was a single, deafening boom, a wave of concussion that rattled Jack to his bones. Jack stood frozen, the coffee stain drying on his shirt, the newly appointed Supreme Commander of the most powerful and unstable fleet in the quadrant, with absolutely, positively, no idea what to do next. The thundering echo of the salute died, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Jack Harrison stood on the bridge, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Every eye was on him. Hundreds of 8-foot-tall, armored aliens were staring at him with an unnerving mixture of awe and expectation. He was acutely aware of the coffee stain on his uniform. He wanted to explain. He wanted to say, "Look, this is all a huge mistake. The button was sticky. I was just trying to avoid getting shot." Empress Jaren regarded him from her throne, her obsidian eyes unreadable. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. The new Supreme Commander appears, overwhelmed by the honor, a sign of true humility. Jack opened his mouth. No sound came out. General Calrex, his face a thundercloud of black fury, stepped forward. "Empress," he growled, his voice a low vibration of contempt. "This ceremony is premature. The battle is not yet won. The traitor fleet is regrouping." He did not look at Jack. He refused to acknowledge him. "The battle for this ship is won, General," Jaren said, her voice cutting. "And it was won by him." She gestured toward Jack. "The bridge is yours, General. See to the pursuit. I will acquaint our new commander with his flagship." Calrex's jaw muscles knotted. He shot Jack a look of pure poison, a look that promised a future of pain. Then he turned, slamming his fist against his chest in a salute to Jaren but pointedly, not to Jack, and strode from the bridge, his black armor seeming to drink the light. "Ben," Jack whispered, turning to his co-pilot, who looked like he had seen a ghost. "Ben, we have to tell them." "Tell them what, sir?" Ben whispered back, his eyes wide as dinner plates. "That you are not a tactical genius. I think we missed our window." "Guards," Jaren commanded, her voice soft now but no less powerful. "Take the commander's attaché. See that he is processed and quartered." Two of the iridescent giants moved toward Ben. "Wait," Jack said, finding his voice. "He is with me. We are a team." "He is your subordinate," Jaren corrected, rising from her throne. "And he will be treated as such. You are the Supreme Commander. You will have your own retinue, your own quarters, your own guards." She glided toward him, the faint chime of her armor the only sound. "Come. We have much to discuss." Jack watched, helpless, as Ben was led away, looking back at Jack with an expression of pure, unadulterated terror. Jack was alone. He was truly, deeply, apocalyptically alone. He was escorted from the bridge into a private transport. It was not an elevator. The compartment, simply detached from the wall, floated silently, and then reattached itself elsewhere in the colossal ship. The doors opened onto a suite of rooms so large that Jack's entire apartment on Earth could have fit in the bathroom. The walls were not walls. They were living crystal, pulsing with a soft, golden light. And one entire side of the room was a transparent dome, looking out onto the starfield and the retreating battle. "Your predecessor's quarters. Supreme Commander," Jaren said, gesturing to the cavernous space. "My predecessor," Jack echoed, his voice hollow. "You mean the traitor, Valerius." "He was," Jaren said, walking to the dome, her hands clasped behind her back. Which makes this position available. The quarters have been cleansed. Mostly. Jack looked around. There was a platform in the center of the room that he assumed was a bed, large enough to park a small shuttle. There were consoles he did not recognize. There was a pool of shimmering liquid that might have been decorative, or it might have been a drinking fountain for a star dragon. "Your Majesty," Jack said, his voice cracking. He cleared his throat. "Empress, you have to understand. What happened out there? It was not tactics. It was an accident. I hit the wrong button. I flushed my engine coolant. I did not mean to destroy those ships. I was just trying to run away." Jaren turned. She walked slowly toward him, her height forcing him to crane his neck back. She studied his face, her expression cold and analytical. "An accident," she repeated. "Yes, a complete 100%. Pants-wettingly terrifying accident." "And the cascade sequence?" she asked, her translator turning his panic button mash into something formal. "The jump that placed you precisely in the path of the assassins, was that, too, an accident?" Yes," Jack said weakly. My hand slipped. Jaren was silent for a long moment. Jack could feel a bead of sweat tracing a path down his spine. She was going to have him executed. He had saved her life by sheer idiotic luck. And now she was realizing she had just promoted a clown to lead her armies. Finally, she spoke. "It does not matter," Jack blinked. "What?" "It does not matter," she repeated, her voice sharp. "Do you know what my bridge crew saw? What the fleet saw?" They saw a ship from a supposedly primitive race appear from nowhere, like a phantom. They saw that ship execute a maneuver unknown to our tactical libraries. A maneuver that, in its accidental genius, used the laws of physics as a weapon to annihilate an elite kill squad. They saw you save their Empress. They saw an omen. She paced the room, her movements fluid and predatory. "The Zilth Empire is old. Commander Harrison, we are a people of tradition, of symbols, and of steel. My fleet is fractured. Half of it followed Valerius into open rebellion. The other half follows me. But they are uncertain. They fear I am weak, and they fear General Calrex, who believes strength is the only virtue." She stopped in front of him again. "Calrex wanted your position. By right of seniority, it should have been his. But he is a hammer. He sees every problem as something to be smashed. He would have charged the traitors head-on, and thousands would have died. He is predictable, and he is ambitious. I suspect he allowed that kill squad to get so close, hoping I would be removed." Jack's blood ran cold. This was not a military promotion. This was a political execution, and he was the blade. "So," he whispered, "you used me. You needed a symbol, an outsider." "The right of combat salvation is an ancient law," Jaren said, a hint of steel in her voice. "One I have not hesitated to invoke. You are a mystery, Jack Harrison. The traitors do not know what to make of you. General Calrex does not know what to make of you. And because of that, for the first time in months, they are the ones who are afraid. I intend to keep it that time." "But I do not know anything," Jack protested, his voice rising in panic. "I am a pilot, I fly. I do not command, I cannot lead a fleet. I do not even know what half the buttons on your bridge do." "Then you will learn," Jaren said, her voice flat. "Or you will pretend. I do not care which. You will stand by my side in the War Council. You will nod when I speak. And when I ask for your counsel, you will provide me with the same accidental brilliance you showed today. Am I clear? But... "You have no choice," Jaren said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You are the Supreme Commander. To the fleet. You are a hero. If you try to resign, If you tell them the truth, they will see you as a fraud, and me as a fool. Calrex will have us both executed for treason and incompetence before the next sun cycle. You will play this part, Commander. You will play it, or you will die. And you will take your entire world down with you when the Zilth turn their anger on your primitive race for this insult. The weight of her words crushed him. He was not just a prisoner. He was a hostage. His entire planet was a hostage. He looked at her, at this terrifying, magnificent, ruthless woman. He saw no mercy in her eyes, only the cold, hard logic of survival. He deflated, his shoulders slumped. Yes, Empress. Good, she said. She turned to leave. A Sergeant Aaron will be assigned as your adjutant. He will brief you on your duties. And get a new uniform. That one is disgraceful. The doors hissed shut, leaving him alone in the massive golden room. Jack walked to the great dome and looked out at the stars. He felt small. He felt trapped. And he was very, very afraid. The next few days were a blur of refined terror. Sergeant Aaron was, as promised, assigned to him. He was another massive Zilth, his face a roadmap of scars, his armor a dull, functional gray, instead of the polished lacquer of the bridge officers. He was terrifyingly formal. Supreme Commander, Aaron boomed, his translated voice sounding like gravel in a blender. Your schedule for the day. 0500 meditation and tactical review. 0600 weapons inspection. Deck 4. 0800 War Council with the Empress. Jack, who had been trying to figure out how to order coffee from the humming food synthesizer, just stared at him. Aaron. Sergeant. Can I call you Aaron? Look. Let's be straight with each other. I am not what you think I am. Aaron stood at perfect attention. Sir, I think you are the Supreme Commander. Right. But, hypothetically, what if I was not? What if I was just a pilot who got very, very lucky? Aaron's face did not change, but his eyes, a strange amber color, seemed to harden. Sir, luck is merely the universe acknowledging a superior will. Your crystalline cloud maneuver is already being taught in the simulators. The recruits are calling it Harrison's Gambit. They are what Jack felt faint. Gambit Aaron, I was flushing the toilet, metaphorically. A brilliant tactical waste disposal maneuver, sir, Aaron said, without a trace of irony. Your quarters, sir, do they meet your needs? It is a little big, Jack said. And I think the pool is humming at me. And Ben, my co-pilot, have you seen him? The attaché, Harrison is safe, sir. He is being debriefed by our intelligence officers. Debriefed, you mean interrogated? It is the same thing, sir, Aaron said. Your uniform. He gestured to a panel that slid open, revealing a row of severe, high-collared Zilth command uniforms, tailored for Jack's human frame, but unmistakably military. They were black and gold, just like the Empress's. Great, Jack muttered. I get to play dress-up. The walk to the War Council was an ordeal. Every soldier he passed, every technician, every officer, snapped to attention and slammed their fist against their chest. Jack, feeling awkward, tried to wave back. Aaron gently, but firmly, pushed his hand down. Sir, Aaron rumbled, it is not customary to flap at the troops. A nod will suffice. Jack nodded. The soldier he had nodded at looked confused, then ecstatic, as if he had just been blessed. This is a nightmare, Jack breathed. Yes, sir, Aaron said. War is... The War Council was held in a dark amphitheater, the center of which was dominated by a holographic tactical display of the entire star system. It was a three-dimensional map of swirling lights, enemy positions marked in red, friendly, in blue. Jarin sat at the head of a massive stone table. General Calrex sat opposite, his arms crossed, his face a mask of simmering resentment. Several other admirals and generals, all towering Zilth, were present. Jack was given a seat at Jarin's right hand. It felt like an electric chair. "The rebel fleet has retreated to the Bis Tenebris," Calrex began, his voice booming as he gestured to a swirling, dark nebula on the map. "They are cowards, hiding in the dark. They are using the gas clouds to mask their repairs. I propose Operation Iron Spike. We take the 1st and 3rd fleets, jump directly to their coordinates, and engage them steel to steel. We will crush Valerius's remaining forces in one glorious battle." The other generals nodded in agreement. It was a classic Zilth strategy, overwhelming, direct, and bloody. Jarin looked at the map. "The Bis Tenebris is notoriously unstable. General, your ships will suffer sensor ghosts, and the casualty estimates for a direct assault are high, over 20%. "A glorious death," Empress, one of the admirals, declared. "To die purging the traitors." "A wasteful death, Admiral," Jarin countered, her voice cold. "We cannot afford to trade ship for ship. We must be smarter." Her obsidian eyes turned to Jack. Jack felt his entire body go rigid. Every eye in the room swiveled to him. Calrex was smiling, a predator's smile. He was waiting. He wanted Jack to speak, to expose himself as the fool he was. "Supreme Commander Harrison," Jarin said, her voice smooth. "You have been silent. You saved this flagship by using unorthodox methods. What is your assessment of General Calrex's Iron Spike?" Jack swallowed. His mouth was desert dry. He looked at the map. He did not see fleets or strategies. He saw a pilot's problem, a gas cloud, a tight formation. He saw what Calrex, the grand strategist, missed. "General," Jack began, his voice barely a croak. He cleared it. "General Calrex, your plan is bold, very direct." Calrex's smile widened. "It is the Zilth way. Terran." "Yes," Jack said, his mind racing. He was just a pilot. What would a pilot do? A pilot would not fly into a dark, unstable gas cloud. A pilot would respect the weather. "But why fly into the cloud at all?" Calrex scoffed. "Because that is where the enemy is." "Exactly," Jack said, finding a thread of desperate confidence. "They are hiding in there. They think we will follow them in. They are probably waiting for you. They have set an ambush. Your Iron Spike is exactly what they expect." The room grew quiet. Jarin leaned forward, intrigued. "And you, Commander," Calrex sneered. "You suggest we wait for them to come out. We are not cowards." "No," Jack said, standing up. He walked toward the holographic map. He felt dizzy. "We will not wait. We will not go in. We will knock." He looked at the tactical display. The nebula was a massive, swirling cloud of red and black. "My ship's sensors, even my archaic sensors, picked up extreme concentrations of tetrian gas in that nebula. Highly volatile. It is a fuel air bomb the size of a solar system." "Irrelevant," Calrex said. "It is inert without a precise high-energy catalyst." "Then let's provide one," Jack said, his voice suddenly sounding far more confident than he felt. He was just spitballing. He was making this up as he went along. "Do not send the fleet. Send one ship, a drone. Send it to here." He pointed to a dense, swirling pocket of the nebula, right on the edge of the rebel fleet's position. "Send a drone with a single, modified plasma warhead. Not to attack the fleet, to attack the nebula. Detonate the warhead. The resulting plasma ignition, it will create a chain reaction, a resonance cascade. It will..." It will ignite the entire nebula. He looked around. The generals were staring at him, as if he had just grown a second head. A resonance cascade, one admiral repeated. That is theoretical. It is suicidal, Calrex roared, slamming his fist on the table. You would risk igniting a stellar nursery based on a guess? This is not a simulator. Terran, this is war. You would burn them without honor. Without combat, it is a coward's tactic. It is, Jack said, his heart hammering. A pilot's tactic. It is using the terrain. It saves our ships. It saves our crews. And it gets the job done. He looked at Jaren. Her face was impossible to read. He had gone too far. This was insane. He was insane. Calrex is right, another general muttered. It is without honor. Honor did not save me from Valerius's assassins, Jaren said, her voice cutting through the room. The Supreme Commander's gambit did. She stood up. General Calrex, your Operation Iron Spike is denied. We will not send 10,000 soldiers to their graves in a predictable ambush. She turned her gaze to Jack. The power in that look was absolute. Supreme Commander Harrison, your ignition gambit, as we shall call it, is authorized. Prepare the drone. Show us the fire you have brought to our fleet. Calrex's face went white, then purple with rage. He was trembling. He looked at Jack with a hatred so pure, so deep, that Jack felt it like a physical blow. Jack just stood there, frozen by the holographic map, wondering if he had just saved the Zilth fleet, or started a fire that would consume them all. The silence that followed Jaren's declaration was absolute. Jack Harrison stood, frozen by the holographic map, the echo of his own voice still hanging in the air. Ignite the nebula. He had said that. He, a man whose greatest tactical decision that morning had been to try the blue synthetic coffee instead of the brown, had just suggested interstellar arson. General Calrex was breathing heavily. His nostrils flared. His contempt had curdled into a visible, physical hatred that radiated from him in waves. He looked from Jack to Jaren, and for a moment, Jack thought the general might actually draw his weapon and end this farce right there. You would, Calrex bit out, his voice dangerously low. Stain the honor of this fleet with this cowardice. I stain our honor by sending thousands to die in a trap. General, Jaren replied, her voice like ice. She did not look at Calrex. Her obsidian eyes were fixed on Jack. The Supreme Commander's plan is unorthodox. But it is not cowardly. It is efficient. It saves Zilth lives, and it punishes traitors. She turned to the admirals. Make it so. Prepare a single drone. Modify the warhead precisely to the commander's specifications, Jack wanted to say. What specifications? I was just guessing. But he held his tongue. He had learned in the last 48 hours that his panicked babbling was interpreted here as cryptic genius. The less he said, the smarter they thought he was. The admirals, clearly torn between their martial traditions and a direct order from their Empress, slammed their fists to their chests. As you command, Empress. The meeting dissolved. Calrex did not move. He waited until every other officer had filed out, leaving only Jack, Jaren, and himself. He strode toward Jack, stopping so close that Jack was forced to look straight up into the general's scarred, furious face. You are a disease, Terran, Calrex hissed, his translator making the words sound like grinding stone. A plague of weakness. You have poisoned her. You have convinced her to abandon the way of the warrior for the tricks of a coward. General, Jaren warned from her throne. I will not be silent, Calrex roared, turning on her. He makes a mockery of us, of our traditions. You place this, child, above your own admirals. You risk the fleet on the random musings of an ape. The random musings of this ape saved my life, General, Jarin said, rising slowly. Something your traditional fleet failed to do. You are on a very thin blade. Calrex, you would do well to remember where your allegiance lies. Calrex stared at her, his entire body rigid. Then, with a snarl, he turned and stormed from the chamber, the doors slamming shut behind him with a boom that rattled Jack's teeth. Jack let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. He seems upset. He is a hammer, Jarin said, sinking back into her throne. She looked tired, the divine power draining from her, leaving a woman burdened. And you have just shown him that not every problem is a nail. He will not forgive you for it. So, what happens if I am wrong? Jack asked, his voice small. What if I just suggested we blow up a drone for no reason? Or what if I ignite it, and it, I do not know, burns up half the quadrant? Then you will have failed, Jarin said simply. And I will have Calrex execute you for incompetence. It will appease him. Briefly, Jack's blood went cold. You are not joking, are you? I never joke about the fleet, Jarin said. She gestured to the door. Go. See your ignition gambit through, Commander. And pray to your primitive gods that it works. Jack spent the next 6 hours in the flagship's main weapons control, a spherical room where the walls were just a 360-degree projection of the space outside. He was surrounded by Zilth weapons technicians, all of whom treated him with a terrifying reverence. They kept asking him for precise calculations. Commander, what is the desired plasma yield? One asked. Jack said, looking at the nebula. The maximum 1. The technicians nodded sagely. Of course, a total saturation. And the resonance frequency, sir, another asked. Shall we tune it to the Tetrian harmonics? Yes, Jack said, grasping at the one word he recognized. Absolutely. Tune it. To the harmonics. Do that. Brilliant, the technician whispered to his colleague. He intends to create a feedback loop. It will not just burn. It will detonate. Jack felt ill. He was just a pilot. He knew how to read a sensor map. He saw a big cloud of flammable gas and a fleet hiding in it. His plan was not a gambit. It was the interstellar equivalent of throwing a match into a gas leak. Sergeant Aaron stood behind him, a silent, gray mountain. The drone is in position, Supreme Commander. On the main viewer, a tiny speck of light detached from the flagship and accelerated toward the Bice Tenebris. It was small, fast, and packed with enough firepower to crack a small moon. It will take 3 hours to reach the detonation point, the technician said. Good, Jack said, trying to sound firm. I am going to my quarters. Let me know when it is time to knock. He fled. He could not stand the expectation. He could not stand the awe. He locked himself in his palatial, lonely quarters and tried to find Ben. Computer, he said to the humming air. Locate Attaché Ben, my co-pilot. The calm, synthesized voice replied. The human attaché is currently in medical quarantine and deep psychological processing. He is not available. Quarantine? Is he sick? He is being acclimated, Supreme Commander. Jack knew what that meant. They were taking Ben apart, piece by piece, learning everything he knew about Jack, about Earth, about the Avenger. They were trying to understand the crystalline cloud maneuver. Jack was alone. The following hours were the longest of his life. He paced the room. He tried to eat the strange, crystalline food that appeared from the synthesizer. He tried to sleep on the bed that felt like a public monument. Finally, Aaron's voice came over the internal comm. "Sir, it is time." When Jack returned to the weapons control center, the tension was so thick he could barely breathe. Jaren was there, standing on an upper dais, her hands clasped behind her. Calrex was also there, in the corner, his arms crossed, a smug, dark look on his face. He was waiting for this to fail. "Drone is in position, Commander," the chief technician said. "The rebel fleet is unaware. They are still holding formation deep inside the cloud." Jack looked at the tactical map. He looked at Jaren. She just nodded. Once. "Do it," Jack whispered. "Detonate," the technician commanded. On the viewer, there was no sound. Just a single, blinding pinpoint of white light inside the nebula. For a second, nothing happened. Calrex snorted. "A firefly! Commander! You have—" He was cut off. The pinpoint of light did not explode. It grew. A wave of impossible blue fire rolled outward from the detonation point, moving with horrifying speed. It was not a normal fire. It was a wave of pure energy. A resonance cascade exactly as the technician had predicted. The tetrian gas was igniting, the fire feeding on itself, turning the entire Bice Tenebris into a star. The sensors went white. The flagship's shields flared as a wave of pure energy washed over them, kilometers away. Alarms shrieked. "Contain the sensor feed," the technician yelled. The view cleared, filtered, and dimmed. The Bice Tenebris was gone. In its place was a roiling, expanding fireball of blue and white plasma. And pouring out of it, like rats from a burning ship, was the rebel fleet, or what was left of it. They were broken. They were blind. Their shields were gone, their engines flickering, their hulls scorched. They were not a fleet. They were victims. They were flying directly into the waiting arms of Jaren's loyalist fleet, which had been parked safely 10 million kilometers away. "All ships," Jaren said, her voice quiet, but ringing with absolute authority. "Engage. Do not let a single traitor escape." Calrex was pale. He stared at the tactical display, watching the red icons of the rebel fleet being extinguished, one, by the blue icons of his own ships. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. A bloodless, efficient, and utterly horrifying victory, engineered by the Terran. Jack turned away. He could not watch. He walked out of the weapons center, his legs shaking. He had done it. He had won. He had killed thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, without a single Zilth casualty on his side. He was a hero, and he felt like a monster. The ignition gambit cemented Jack's reputation. He was no longer just an omen. He was a prophet of war. He was the Firebringer, the Void Reaper. The soldiers whispered about him. They called him the Silent Commander because he rarely spoke, interpreting his stunned, horrified silence as calculating, cold genius. But his success only widened the chasm between him and the traditional military command. Calrex and his admirals grew more resentful. They were warriors of steel and honor. Jack was a warrior of physics and clever tricks. He won battles without fighting. It was an insult to their entire culture. Another crisis arose. A rebel detachment had fortified a key shipyard in a sector called the Wraith Shoals. It was an impossibly dense asteroid field, so chaotic and fast-moving that no capital ship could navigate it. The rebels were using it as a safe harbor to build a new fleet. The War Council was convened again. "The shoals are impenetrable," Calrex stated, his voice clipped. He had not spoken directly to Jack since the ignition gambit. "My bombers will suffer 70% losses just getting to the shipyard. We must blockade it, starve them out. It will take years." "We do not have years," Jaren said. She looked at Jack. The entire room looked at him. Jack hated this. He hated this part. He looked at the map. It was a pilot's nightmare. The asteroids were dense, metallic, and moving fast. Blockade is fine, but it is not a solution. And what is your solution, Firebringer? Calrex sneered. Do you plan to set the rocks on fire? No, Jack said, rubbing his temples. He was tired. He was stressed. He just wanted this to be over. But the sensors say the asteroids are ferrous, high-yield iron and nickel. So, an admiral asked. So, Jack said, thinking aloud again. Flying ships in is stupid. It is a grinder. But what if we do not go in? What if we just stir the pot? He gestured to the map. Take 2 supercarriers, the heaviest ships we have. Park them. Here and here, on opposite sides of the field. Reroute their main reactor core. Not to the engines, not to the weapons, to the shield generators. The engineers in the room looked confused. Commander, one said, that would overload the shield emitters. It would not create a barrier. It would create a massive, unstable, magnetic field. Exactly, Jack said, his eyes lighting up with the insane logic. A massive magnetic field. An electromagnet the size of a moon. 2 of them. One polarized positive, one negative. We turn them on at the same time. Calrex looked baffled. What in the name of the void? You are not a pilot, General, Jack said, feeling a strange surge of his old, sarcastic self. What happens when you introduce a massive, chaotic magnetic field to a dense cluster of metallic asteroids? You turn their safe harbor into a pinball machine. The asteroids will do our job for us. They will destabilize. They will collide. They will crush that shipyard flat without us firing a shot. There was a long, stunned silence. Jarin smiled. It was a small, sharp, terrifying smile. The magnetic gambit, she said. I like it. Make it so. The plan worked. It worked even better than Jack had expected. The 2 carriers, their engines groaning, poured raw reactor power into their shield emitters. The resulting magnetic pulse sent the entire Wraith shoals into chaos. The asteroids, pulled and pushed by incomprehensible forces, smashed into each other, creating a cascade of destruction that pulverized the hidden rebel shipyard. Sensor readings showed the shipyard's energy signature vanished in less than an hour. Another victory. 0 casualties. Jack was now, officially, the most successful and bloodless commander in Zilth history. And Calrex had had enough. The general found Jack not in the War Council, but in the observation dome, where Jack often went to just look at the stars, to remind himself of home. Commander, Jack turned. Calrex was not in his full armor. He wore a simple black uniform, and he was not snarling. He looked almost reasonable. General, Jack said, tensing. Another stunning victory, Calrex said. The words sounded like they pained him. You have saved thousands of lives. The Empress is very pleased. Jack was suspicious. It was just physics. General. Yes, Calrex said, standing beside him, looking out at the void. You are very clever. That is your strength, and it is her weakness. Jack blinked. What? The Empress, Calrex said, his voice low, conspiratorial. She is young. She is idealistic. She believes you are a sign. A new way. She believes she can win this entire war without a single drop of Zilth blood being spilled. Using your tricks. Jack did not say anything. He was, in fact, worried about the same thing. War is not clean, Commander, Calrex said, his voice almost kind. It is sacrifice. It is steel. It is blood. By filling her head with these painless victories, You are teaching her to despise the very warriors who keep her on that throne. My admirals, my soldiers, the men and women who have bled for her. Jack felt a cold knot in his stomach. Calrex was making sense. Jack was an outsider. He was making them look obsolete. I never wanted this, Jack said quietly. I told her I am not a commander. But she does not listen, does she? Calrex said, turning to him. She listens only to you. You have become her prophet. She is isolating herself. She is pushing away her most loyal subjects. She is becoming reckless, unzilth. And the fleet is worried. They see her reliance on an outsider as a sign of instability. They fear she is being manipulated. The implication was clear. She was being manipulated by him. Calrex had, in one deft move, flipped the entire narrative. Jack was not the hero. He was the poison. What are you saying? Jack asked. I am saying, be careful, Commander, Calrex said, placing a heavy hand on Jack's shoulder. Jack fought the urge to flinch. You are a weapon, and she is pointing you at her own people. When she no longer needs you, weapons are discarded. I am a soldier, Harrison. I respect tradition. I respect strength. I worry that she is losing respect for both. Calrex squeezed his shoulder, a gesture that was almost friendly. Just think about it. The general left. Jack stood alone, his mind reeling. Calrex was right. He had seen it. The way Jarin dismissed the admirals, the way she used his ideas like a club. He was not her commander. He was her pet genius. And Calrex was the sane one. The traditional, honorable soldier, worried about his Empress. Jack was completely, totally, and utterly wrong. He had just been played like a fiddle. A new crisis. This time, political. A neutral race, the Cygnian, were threatening to ally with the rebels, which would open up a new, disastrous front in the war. Jarin insisted on a face-to-face diplomatic mission on a neutral station. It is a trap, Empress, Calrex argued in the council. Let me take the fleet. A show of force. A show of force will push them to the rebels, Jarin countered. This requires diplomacy. I will go. With my personal honor guard, she paused. And the Supreme Commander. Jack almost choked. Me, why me? I am not a diplomat. You are a curiosity, Jarin said, her eyes glittering. Your presence will keep them off balance. They will not know what to make of you. It is a tactical advantage. The meeting on the Cygnian station was tense. The aliens were avian, all feathers and sharp, nervous gestures. The negotiations were held in a vast, sterile white room. Jack stood behind Jarin, feeling profoundly useless, trying to look imposing. The talks broke down. The Cygnian ambassador shrieked an insult. Jarin stood, her face like thunder. And then the doors exploded. Armed figures in black armor, not Zilth, but not Cygnian, stormed the room, their weapons firing. It was an ambush. Jarin's honor guard moved instantly, forming a protective wall, but they were outnumbered. Empress, this way, a guard yelled. It was chaos. Blaster fire tore the room apart. Jack, unarmed, did the only thing he knew how to do. He dove for cover, pulling Jarin with him. They crashed behind a heavy stone table. My guard, Jarin snarled, drawing a small, elegant energy pistol from her robes. She was not afraid. She was furious. They are pinned down, Jack yelled over the roar. We have to move. He saw it a maintenance conduit, its panel blown half open by a stray shot. It was a pilot's escape. This way now. He grabbed her arm. She resisted for a second. A queen not used to being manhandled, but the blast that vaporized the table they were behind convinced her. He shoved her into the dark, metal tube and scrambled in after her. They were in a cramped, dark, greasy maintenance shaft. They were pressed together, hip to shoulder, her regal perfume mixing with the smell of ozone and burnt metal. He could hear her breathing, fast and angry. "They dared," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "They dared." "Just be quiet," Jack panted, his heart hammering. "They will pass." They waited. The sounds of the firefight faded as the attackers moved on, hunting them. They were alone, together, in the dark. "You are not afraid," Jarin said. It was not a question. Jack let out a short, hysterical laugh. "Empress, I have been in a constant, gut-churning state of panic since the moment I hit that button. This is actually familiar. Running for my life in a tight space. This is just basic piloting. I am an expert at this part." She was silent. He could feel the tension radiating from her. But it was not just anger. It was something else. He was the first person in her entire life who had not treated her like a goddess. He had just been honest. "You are," she said, her voice strangely soft. "A very peculiar man. Jack Harrison." "You keep saying that," he whispered. He risked a look out of a small vent. "Okay, I think they are gone. We have to get to the hangar. Can you move in that dress?" She looked down at her heavy, ceremonial robes. Without a word, she reached for a series of clasps. The heavy armored plates and golden fabric fell away, pooling on the floor of the conduit, leaving her in a simple, form-fitting black suit. She was still impossibly tall, still regal, but human, almost. "I am Zilth, Commander," she said, her voice all steel again. "Try to keep up." She took the lead. They ran. They moved through the guts of the station, Jack using his pilot's sense of direction to navigate the labyrinth. They encountered two of the black armored soldiers. Jarin took one down with a ruthless, economic blast from her pistol. The other one leveled his rifle at her. But Jack, acting on pure instinct, grabbed a heavy power conduit and swung it, crashing it into the soldier's chest and sending him flying. They did not speak. They just moved. They reached the shuttle bay, sealed the doors behind them, and blasted off. Jack, flying the small diplomatic ship with a skill that made Jarin's pilot look like a child. They were safe on the flagship. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only a shaky, cold vacuum. Jarin had a long, red burn along her arm. She was in her private quarters, tending to it, when Jack was summoned. Aaron showed him in, then left, sealing the doors. "General Calrex is displeased," Jarin said, not looking at him. She was dabbing a medical gel on the wound. "He is demanding we declare war on the Signian. He blames them for the ambush." "It was not the Signians," Jack said. She stopped. She looked up at him. "Explain." "Their bodyguards. They were clumsy. They were surprised. The attackers. They were professionals. They moved like a military unit. And they knew where you would be. They knew the layout. That was not a negotiation gone wrong. That was an execution. They just failed." Jarin stared at him, her black eyes searching his. "You see this as well." "I am a pilot," he said. "I read maneuvers. That was a planned strike." "Calrex," Jarin whispered, more to herself than to him. He would not. He is Zilth. He is honorable." But the doubt was clear in her voice. The doubt Jack's ignition gambit had planted. The doubt Calrex himself had just tried to use against her. "He told me. He said you were the reckless one," Jack said quietly. "He said you were using me. That you were unstable." Jarin's head snapped up. The look on her face was terrifying. "He Said that? To you? He said I was a weapon you would discard, Jack admitted, feeling stupid. The Empress laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was sharp and bitter. So that is his gambit. He paints me as the fanatic, and you as my tool. He whispers to the admirals that I am weak, and he whispers to you that I am strong-willed. He is clever, more clever than I thought. She stood up, walking toward Jack. She was very close. The distance between them was no longer that of an empress and a subject. It was that of two survivors. He is not worried about my honor, Jack Harrison. He is worried about this. She just veered between them. Your stupid ideas, as you call them, they work. They are winning this war, and every time you win, his power shrinks. The ambush today, it was not meant for the Signians. It was meant to remove me and to dispose of you. Jack finally understood. Calrex was not trying to save the Empire. He was trying to break it so he could take the pieces. And Jack? Jack was the rock in his boot. So what now? Jack asked, his voice low. Now, Jarn said, we fight, but not his way. We fight your way. We will be clever. We will be unconventional. She was standing so close now. He could see the tiny flecks of gold in her obsidian eyes. The political tension was gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. You are not just an accident, Commander, she whispered, her voice losing its regal tone. You are inconvenient, and I find I am starting to enjoy the inconvenience. The air between them was electric. She was an empress. He was a fraud. She was a warrior. He was a pilot who just wanted coffee. But in that moment, in the aftermath of fire and betrayal, they were the only two people in the galaxy who understood each other. Zavarin broke the gaze first. She turned away, becoming the Empress once more. The fleet moves to the Xylos blockade. Calrex has a plan. I want you to find a better one. Yes, Empress, Jack said. As he walked out, he realized, with a sinking feeling, that he was no longer just playing a part. He was no longer just trying to survive. He was in this. He was her commander, and he was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The thought terrified him more than anything Calrex could ever do. The Xylos blockade was a failure. Jack Harrison could see it from the moment the tactical display resolved on the flagship's bridge. It was a messy, porous line of ships trying to contain a rebel fleet that was darting in and out of a dense asteroid cluster. Calrex's strategy was simple: park the heaviest ships at the edge and dare the rebels to come out. The rebels, predictably, were not that stupid. They were using the asteroid field for cover, launching lightning raids against the blockade and vanishing back into the dust. Calrex's ships were too big, too slow, and his strategy was pure, stubborn arrogance. The general's plan is static, Jack said, his voice quiet. He was in the War Council room, but this time, he and Jaren were alone, staring at the holographic map. The tension from the Signian ambush still hung between them. A strange, sharp intimacy. Static is Calrex's specialty, Jaren said, her arms crossed. He believes will is a substitute for tactics. He is losing ships. He is losing morale. The admirals, they follow him out of tradition, but they are starting to see the cost. He's a hammer, Jack murmured, repeating her own words back to her. And this is a swarm of flies. You cannot hammer flies. He felt a strange new confidence. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was a fuel. He knew he was right. He, the pilot, understood this terrain better than the decorated general. He is bleeding us dry, Jarin agreed. The admirals will demand a full, suicidal assault into the field before they accept the shame of a retreat. Either way, Calrex wins. He either becomes a martyr, or he proves my new way is a failure. So, Jack said, tapping the display. The holographic asteroids swirled around his hand. We need a plan, a real one. But to do that, I need to know what he's done before. I need to see his service record, his old strategies. Jarin's eyebrow arched. You wish to profile our general? I wish to anticipate him, Jack corrected. I am tired of reacting. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. The ship's archives are open to you, Supreme Commander. Your authority is total. His authority. The word still felt like a borrowed suit, 2 sizes too big. He left her, walking through the massive corridors not to his quarters, but to the ship's core. Sergeant Aaron met him at the junction. Sir, the archives are this way, but they are vast. Perhaps I can assist your search. No, Aaron, Jack said. This is something I have to do myself. The archive was not a room of books. It was a cold, dark sphere. When Jack stepped into the center, the sphere lit up, the walls becoming an infinite, 3-dimensional library of light, data swirling around him. The ship's interface, sensing his command rank, responded to his thoughts. Show me General Calrex. Tactical history. Files bloomed around him. Battles, reports, commendations. He saw Calrex's career in an instant bold, brutal, and utterly predictable. Always the direct assault. Always Operation Iron Spike. He had no subtlety. Jack frowned. The man who had set the Cygnian ambush was subtle. The man who had tried to frame him was subtle. This was a mismatch. Calrex was not the hammer, Jarin thought. He was a hammer being wielded by someone else. A cold feeling prickled Jack's skin. He was missing something. Show me the death of Supreme Commander Valerius. The archive shifted. The file on the former commander appeared. It was heavily classified. Jack pressed his authority against it. The file opened. He saw the reports of the battle. He saw the analysis of his own crystalline cloud maneuver. And then he saw a subfile, a personal log, sealed by Empress Jarin, to be opened only by her or her direct successor. His heart hammered. Direct successor. That was him. Open the file. The archive darkened, and a single, holographic image of Jarin appeared in front of him. She was not the Empress. She was broken. Her armor was off. Her face was pale with terror and grief. It was a recording, time-stamped just moments before Jack's Avenger had torn a hole in reality. His name was General Tyrus, Jarin's recorded voice whispered, hoarse with despair. She was speaking to an aide, someone off camera. He was my choice, my only choice. He was loyal. He was smart. And Calrex knew it. Jack froze. His name was General Tyrus, not Jack. The explosion on his transport, the recorded Jarin continued, her voice cracking. It was no accident. Calrex had him murdered. He has cornered me. Valerius is a traitor. Calrex is a vulture. And Tyrus is dead. I have no one left. The fleet will shatter. I have no commander. No one. The log ended. The archive slowly repopulated around Jack, but he did not see it. He stood in the dark, the blood draining from his face. He was not her choice. He was not a sign. He was not an omen. He was an accident. A piece of flotsam she had grabbed in a moment of sheer political desperation. General Tyrus was her first choice, her real choice. Jack was just the pilot who hit the wrong button, the convenient fool who stumbled onto the stage at the exact second she needed anyone to fill the role. Every moment of their connection, his unconventional mind, her enjoyment of his inconvenience, it was all a lie. She had not seen genius in him. She had seen a tool, a blank, ignorant, human tool that was not part of the Zilth power structure, a weapon she could aim at Calrex without fear of it turning on her. He felt the burn of betrayal, cold and sharp. He felt like a fool, a naive, pathetic fool who had actually started to believe he belonged here. He had started to think that maybe, just maybe, she saw something in him. She saw a convenient rock to throw at her enemy. Nothing more. "Commander," Jack spun, his heart leaping into his throat. Sergeant Aaron was standing at the entrance of the archive sphere, his scarred face grim. "Aaron." "What is it?" Jack's voice was hollow. "You must come to the bridge, sir. Immediately. General Calrex has convened the fleet command, without the Empress." The walk to the bridge was a blur. The betrayal in his mind was a roaring fire. But the soldier's instinct, the pilot's instinct for danger took over. When they arrived, the bridge was crowded. Calrex was at the main holotable, flanked by 4 admirals Jack did not recognize. They wore the colors of the home fleet, Calrex's personal command. They looked mutinous. "There you are, Commander," Calrex sneered. He did not salute. The other admirals did not move. This was it. This was the coup. "Where is the Empress?" General Jack demanded, his voice colder than he expected. "The Empress is being protected," Calrex said smoothly. "In her quarters. As of this moment, I am assuming emergency command of this fleet." "On what authority?" Aaron rumbled, his hand moving to his sidearm. "On the authority of fleet security," Calrex said. He gestured, and the main holotable lit up. "For weeks, we have suffered unconventional victories. We have won battles through gambits and tricks. I have discovered why." The image of the Wraith Shoals shipyard appeared. "The Supreme Commander's magnetic gambit," Calrex announced, his voice booming. "A stunning success. He destroyed the rebel shipyard." He zoomed in. Faked sensor logs overlaid the image. Or so he claimed. "I have had our loyal sensor technicians analyze the debris. These were not warship signatures. Admirals. They were medical transports, life support modules, hospital ships." A murmur of horror went through the bridge crew. He is lying," Jack said, his mind reeling. "Am I?" Calrex countered. "He attacked non-combatants. He slaughtered thousands of our own people who were being held prisoner at that shipyard. A fact he conveniently missed. A war crime. An atrocity." That is not true," Jack protested. "And why would he do this?" Calrex continued, his voice dripping with false sorrow. "Because he is not our commander. He is a spy." The bridge went utterly silent. "The Terran attaché," Calrex said. "The one who came with him. He has been helpful. He has confessed. He has admitted they were on a deep cover mission from Earth. Their objective: infiltrate the Zilth fleet, gain the Empress's trust, and destabilize our command structure from within. He has made our Empress a puppet, and he has used her authority to wage war on children and doctors." "He is a traitor," one of the admirals roared, pointing at Jack. "An agent of Earth." The bridge crew turned, their faces a mixture of confusion, horror, and rising fury. Jack's own honor guard, the men Aaron had assigned, looked uncertainly at each other. The fleet was breaking in two. Right here, right now. "General," Jack said, his voice shaking. He was not just a fool. He was a framed fool. "What is the meaning of this?" Jaren's voice cut through the air like a vibroblade. She strode onto the bridge, her personal guard flanking her. They had clearly had to fight their way from her quarters. She was in full armor, her face a mask of cold fury. Calrex turned, a slow, reptilian smile spreading across his face. Empress, you are just in time. We have exposed the traitor. He repeated his accusations, his voice full of false righteousness. He laid out the evidence, the faked sensor logs, Ben's confession. He has charmed you, Empress, Calrex finished, his voice dropping to a sympathetic growl. He has used his alien ways to cloud your judgment. You are not yourself. For the good of the Empire, I am relieving you of command. The fleet. The fleet demands his execution, and your convalescence. Calrex's soldiers, positioned around the bridge, raised their plasma rifles. They were not aiming at Jaren. They were aiming at her guard, and at Jack. It was a perfect trap. Jaren looked at Calrex, her face unreadable. She looked at her bridge crew, their faces full of doubt. She looked at the admirals, their faces full of righteous anger. And then she looked at Jack. Her eyes were not pleading. They were not desperate, as they had been in the recording. They were expectant. She did not know if he was a spy. She did not know if the logs were real. But she had made her bet. She had placed her entire empire on this single, accidental human playing card. And Jack was a vortex of fury. He was furious at Jaren for using him. He was furious at Calrex for framing him. He was furious at himself for being so stupid. He was a fraud, a tool, a fool, and a traitor. He could run. Aaron was beside him. They could fight their way out. He could steal a ship. He could go home. He could leave her to this mess, this monster she had created by her own political maneuvering. But he looked at Calrex's smug face, and he looked at Jaren's. He chose. He let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound so unexpected, so completely insane, that everyone on the bridge, including Calrex, stared at him. "Wow," Jack said, his voice shaking, but not with fear. It was with a strange, giddy rage. You are just terrible at this." Calrex's smile vanished. "What did you say? Terran?" "I said," Jack said, walking forward, away from his guards. "You are a terrible liar. I mean, medical ships, really. That is the best you could come up with." He strode to the main tactical console. The Zilth technicians backed away from him. "He is faking," one of Calrex's admirals yelled. "Am I?" Jack said, his fingers flying over the console. He was not a commander. He was not a strategist. But he was a pilot. And a pilot knows his sensors. "You faked the energy signatures. You claimed they were Type 4 medical life support modules." He tapped a few commands. "But you are lazy. You just copied the file and changed the header. You forgot to scrub the source code. You forgot to scrub the original sensor metadata." He hit one last key. The image on the main screen changed. The medical signatures vanished, replaced by the original, raw data. "That," Jack said, pointing, "is a weapons-grade particle forge. That is a torpedo casing manufactory. And, oh, look, that's the signature for a cloaking generator, something the rebels should not have. You did not just lie, General. You lied badly." The bridge was silent. The admirals stared at the screen. They knew those signatures. They looked at Calrex. "It is a trick," Calrex roared, his face turning purple. "He is an infiltrator. He is manipulating the data." "Then let's talk about the other data," Jack said, his heart hammering so fast he thought it might burst. He felt alive. "The ambush on the Cygnian station. The one you blame on the rebels." He pulled up a new file. "You tried to frame me. You processed my co-pilot. You processed me. You took my biometrics, my DNA, my retinal scans. You have a file on Jack Harrison." He looked at Calrex. "And you have one on General Calrex." "What is the meaning of this?" an admiral demanded. The general claimed he was on this ship during the ambush, planning a counterstrike, Jack said. But I got curious. I am a pilot. I like to check the flight logs. He pulled up a new file. It was the security log from the Signian station, a log he had Aaron pull for the archives just yesterday, on a hunch. The station's logs show a private, unregistered diplomatic shuttle docked in a restricted bay 2 hours before the negotiations. Jack said. The pilot. He wore a helmet. But the ship's internal scanner, it logged his biometrics. He brought up the file. A string of Zilth biometric data. And now, Jack said, his voice ringing with power. Let's compare that to the file on General Calrex. He hit the key. The data streams ran side by side. Match found. The words blazed in green across the main screen. The bridge was a tomb. Every eye was on Calrex. You, Jarin whispered, her voice full of a terrible, cold realization. It was you. He faked it, Calrex screamed, his eyes wild. His mask of the honorable soldier was gone, revealing the rabid animal beneath. He is the traitor I am loyal I am. You, Jack said, his voice dropping to a deadly quiet. We're not on this ship, General. You were on that station. You were leading the ambush. You tried to kill your Empress. It was over. The lie was broken. Traitor, Calrex shrieked, his voice cracking. He ripped his sidearm from its holster. It was not a blaster. It was a primitive, brutal-looking projectile weapon. He pointed it, not at Jarin, but at Jack. You did this, he fired. Jack did not even have time to flinch. But Sergeant Aaron was faster. The big, gray-armored Zilth had been moving the entire time, anticipating the break. He lunged, shoving Jack to the deck, his own body taking the full force of the blast. Aaron crumpled. A dark hole punched through his chest plate. No, Jack yelled. Calrex raised his weapon again, turning it on Jarin. Die, all of you. His own admirals, their faces masks of horror at the revelation, drew their weapons and fired on their own general. But they were too late. Calrex was already lunging for the main console, his hand slamming down on a large, red crystal. If I cannot have this fleet, he snarled, as his own men's blaster fire hit him. No one will. An alarm shrieked. A new voice filled the bridge. Warning. Primary reactor core overload initiated. Detonation in 5 minutes. Calrex collapsed, his body smoking. A final, insane grin of triumph on his face. The ship, the entire flagship, was going to explode. The galaxy dissolved into a wail. A piercing, synthesized siren overlaid the bridge's comm system, and every console, every screen, flashed a single, horrifying message in Zilth. Reactor core overload. Detonation in 4 minutes, 59 seconds. For a full second, the bridge was frozen. The admirals who had just executed their general stared at his smoking corpse, their weapons still hot. The bridge crew looked, paralyzed, at the countdown. Empress Jarin herself was rigid, her gaze fixed on the body of the man who had betrayed her. Her face, a mask of cold. Terrible understanding. Only Jack Harrison moved. He scrambled on the deck, ignoring the blaring alarms, and crawled to Sergeant Aaron. The big Zilth was on his back, his breath a ragged, wet gasp. The projectile from Calrex's weapon had punched a black, smoking hole clean through his iridescent armor. "Aaron!" Jack yelled, pressing his hands against the wound. It was futile. Blood, a dark, violet color, welled up around his gloves. "Medic, get a medic now." His voice was a human shriek in a room of alien silence. The sound of it broke the spell. "Evacuate!" one of the admirals roared, finally understanding. "All hands, abandon ship, flee the flagship." He lunged for the fleet-wide communication panel. No. Jack's voice was a primal scream of command. It was so unexpected, so full of raw authority, that the Admiral froze, his hand hovering over the crystal stud. Everyone stared at him. The Terran. The fraud. The fool. "Look at the tactical display," Jack bellowed, pointing a bloody glove at the holographic map. The bridge was shaking now, a low, deep vibration as the reactor began to tear itself apart. "Look where we are. We are in the Xylos blockade. The rebel fleet is right there. They are waiting." He staggered to his feet, his mind a crystalline shard of pure, cold clarity. The betrayal, the lies, the ache in his heart, it was all fuel. This was his real plan, Jack shouted, jabbing his finger at Calrex's body. He was not just a traitor. He was in league with Valerius all along. He was not trying to beat the rebels. He was trying to join them. This whole thing. It was a final, glorious gift to his new masters. The admirals looked at the map. They looked at each other. The horrifying truth dawned on them. "If we evacuate," Jack's voice cut through their shock, "we flood this sector with life pods. Our life pods. The rebels will scoop us up. They will capture the Admiralty. They will capture the flagship's crew." He locked eyes with Jaren, who was now staring at him, her black eyes wide. "They will capture you. The war ends. We lose." The admiral, who had tried to order the evacuation, looked pale. "But the core. It is overloading. We have 3 minutes." "It cannot be stopped," a voice crackled over the internal comm. It was the chief engineer, his voice tight with panic. "The general. He used command-level override codes. The shutdown sequence is locked. The magnetic containment is failing. We cannot stop it." The ship lurched, a violent, groaning tier of metal. Jaren strode forward, her face a mask of impossible calm. She stood in the center of her bridge, the red warning lights painting her golden armor in a bloody sheen. She looked at Jack, the lie, the archive, General Tyrus. None of it mattered. Only this. "What do you suggest, Supreme Commander?" Her voice was not a plea. It was not a test. It was an order. She was giving him the ship, Jack's mind, the mind of a pilot, not a commander, raced. He looked at the schematic of the reactor that had replaced the countdown on the main screen. "He is right. We cannot stop it. The reaction is critical. It is a runaway train." He looked at the navigation map. He looked at the reactor. "We cannot stop it," he breathed, the insane logic forming in his mind. "But we can move it." "What?" the engineer's voice crackled. "The core," Jack said, his voice dropping. "We cannot shut it down, but we can eject it." "Forbidden!" the engineer shrieked. "Commander, the containment protocols." Ejecting a core at this stage of overload it is not just forbidden. It is useless. The resulting explosion, the plasma wave. It will still vaporize this ship. "Not if we are not here when it explodes," Jack roared. He was already at the navigator's station, shoving the stunned Zilth aside. "Get me the helm, full manual control. All engines. Now." "Commander," the admiral protested. "Do it!" Jaren's voice thundered, and the admiral obeyed. The controls lit up under Jack's hands. The ship felt familiar. It was just a ship. A big, dying, angry ship. He was a pilot. He could fly this. "What are you doing?" Jaren asked, her hands gripping the console next to him as the ship's engines screamed, powering up. "Calrex wanted a glorious battle," Jack grunted, his fingers flying, inputting navigation commands. "He is going to get one. The rebel fleet is holding at grid 4 Alpha. They think we are dead in the water. They are waiting for us to surrender." He slammed the main throttle forward. "The flagship. A vessel the size of a city jumped. The acceleration threw everyone not holding onto the deck. "You are," Jarin whispered, her eyes fixed on the main viewport. The rebel fleet, a cluster of red icons, was suddenly, terrifyingly close. "You are turning this ship into a missile." "A time bomb," Jack corrected, his teeth gritted. "We cannot stop the explosion. We cannot outrun it. But we can aim it." The countdown was on the main screen. 2 minutes. The rebel ships were scattering. They realized, too late, that the flagship was not surrendering. It was attacking. "The core containment is at 50%, the engineer yelled. "It is breaching. We have seconds, not minutes." "Jack," Jarin's voice was sharp. "I see it," he yelled. The ship was shuddering, threatening to tear itself apart. He was fighting the controls, his arms aching, his pilot's instincts screaming. "We are not going to make it to their position. 1 minute. We do not have to," he panted. "We just have to get close." He looked at Jarin. Her face was calm, her knuckles white on the console. In the midst of alarms and death, they were in a pocket of strange, terrible silence. "You lied to me," Jack said, his voice a low growl. He never took his eyes from the viewport. "Yes," Jarin replied, her voice just as low. "Tyrus was your choice. I was an accident, a tool." "Yes," she said. The countdown said 50 seconds. "I saw the log," he said. Her head snapped toward him. He could feel her stare. He knew he was a pawn. And he was still here, still flying the ship. "It does not matter," Jack gritted, fighting a vibration that rattled his teeth. "I was an accident. Calrex was a traitor. But this is a choice." He looked at her, his eyes blazing. "The ship is in their path. Their escape route is cut off." 30 seconds. "All power from engines to the magnetic stabilizers," Jack yelled. "We need a clean ejection." Now, the ship stopped accelerating and just drifted. A dead, silent behemoth, floating right into the heart of the panicked rebel formation. 10 seconds, the engineer shrieked. "Core integrity. Gone. Eject," Jack whispered. 5-4. Jarin was looking at him, her face full of something. Not fear, not anger. Something he could not name. 3-2. "Eject, eject, eject," Jack roared, slamming his entire fist down on the massive, red crystal command stud. A catastrophic thud tore through the ship, a sound so deep it was felt in their bones. The ship died. All at once, the lights went out. The engine hum vanished. The alarms stopped. The only sound was the hiss of emergency oxygen and the sudden, terrified silence of the crew. The ship was dead, floating in the void. For one eternal second, nothing happened. Then, the universe turned white. A light, brighter than a sun, brighter than anything Jack had ever seen, bloomed outside the viewport. It was beautiful. It was silent. A moment later, the shockwave hit. The flagship, even with its power off, was tossed like a toy. The entire bridge was thrown sideways. Jack was ripped from the console, his head slamming against the bulkhead. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Jarin, falling. He woke to the smell of ozone and burning metal. The bridge was a wreck. Emergency lights pulsed a sickly red, casting long, dramatic shadows. Bodies were slumped over consoles. Groans filled the air. He was alive. He pushed himself up. His head was pounding. He looked at the viewport. The rebel fleet was gone. It was just gone. Vaporized. Annihilated. In its place, a new nebula was being born. A swirling, violent, beautiful cloud of superheated gas and plasma. The funeral pyre of Calrex's ambition and the grave of the rebellion. "Medics," Jack croaked. "Lights." His voice was raw. Shaken figures. The bridge crew began to stir. Technicians moved, their hands shaking, to auxiliary power. The main lights flickered on, humming, revealing the devastation. "Aaron," Jack whispered. He scrambled across the tilted deck. The sergeant was still breathing, shallowly. The medics, jolted into action, were finally at his side, applying a biofoam seal. "He is stable, Commander," one of them said, his voice trembling. For now, Jack stood, his legs unsteady. He turned. Jaren was on her knees, by her throne. She was not hurt. She was just watching him. Her crown was gone. Her hair, a cascade of white gold, was loose. She looked less like an empress and more like a survivor. The political games, the lies, the war, it all seemed so distant. They were just two people, in a broken room, at the end of the world. Jack walked toward her, his legs shaking. He stopped a few feet away. He was covered in Aaron's violet blood, and his own. He was exhausted. He was furious. He was the Supreme Commander. "So," he said, his voice a hoarse rasp. "That was unconventional, even for me." Jaren slowly, painfully, got to her feet. She looked at the viewport, at the roiling cloud that had been her enemy. She looked at the body of Calrex. Then, she looked at Jack. The mask was gone. The Empress was gone. He saw only the woman. Her obsidian eyes were... He did not know what they were. They were full of a new, raw, terrifying respect. "You," she said, her voice quiet. "You are not General Tyrus." Jack held her gaze. The betrayal still stung, a cold ache beneath the adrenaline. But it did not matter. "No," he said. "I am not." You are Supreme Commander Harrison," she stated. It was not a title. It was a fact, a new one that had just been forged in fire. He just nodded, too tired to speak. He had won the battle. He had exposed the traitors. He had ended the Civil War in a single, desperate, insane gambit. But as he looked at her, at the raw, unguarded power in her eyes, he knew this was not an ending. The rebellion was over. But the power vacuum, the broken fleet, the two of them, this was a beginning. And it was going to be so much harder than just hitting the wrong button. The silence on the bridge was a physical thing, heavier and more profound than the gravity that had just returned. It was the sound of 1,000 lives, almost ending. The emergency lights painted the wreckage in pulsing, ugly shades of red. The air smelled of burnt metal and ozone, a sharp, sterile scent that stung the back of the throat. Jack Harrison stood in the center of the tilted, ruined bridge. He was covered in sweat, engine grease, and the dark, violet blood of the one man who had been his only real ally. He looked at Empress Jaren. Her crown was gone. Her perfect golden hair was a tangled mess. And her face was completely, utterly bare. The mask of the Empress, the armor of the divine ruler, had been burned away in the reactor fire. She was just a woman, staring at him as if he were the first solid thing she had seen in her life. His heart was a cold, aching stone. "You are not General Tyrus." The words from the archive echoed in his mind, a counterpoint to the fading alarms. He had been a tool, a convenience, an accident. He looked at her, and she at him. The victory was total. The rebellion was annihilated, turned into a new, beautiful, violent nebula. The war was over, and the lie was between them, a chasm wider than the one they had just torn in space. The spell was broken by a low groan. One of Calrex's 4 admirals, the ones who had mutinied with him, was pushing a piece of wreckage off his chest. He saw Calrex's body, then he saw Jaren, and then he saw Jack. The Admiral's face, a mask of aristocratic Zilth pride, crumbled into a mixture of terror and shame. "Empress," the Admiral breathed, staggering to one knee. He tricked us. We were loyal. He..." Silence. The voice was not Jaren's. It was Jack's. It was not a yell. It was a low, rough, exhausted command, and it cut through the air with absolute authority. The Admiral froze. Jack tore his eyes away from Jaren. He looked at the chaos of his bridge. His bridge. He was done being a puppet. He was done being an accident. He was the man who had just saved them. He walked past Jaren, his boots crunching on the shattered crystal of the navigation console. He stopped over the wounded Admiral. "You mutinied against your Empress. You followed a traitor. You are relieved of command." He turned to the rest of the bridge. The crew was stirring, dazed and wounded. "Damage report," he barked. "Now, get me engineering. Get me medical." "Medical." He stopped, his voice catching. He spun around. "Aaron. Where is Aaron?" The medics were already there. They had sealed the wound. The sergeant was unconscious, his breathing shallow, but he was alive. The medics were working with a frantic, precise energy. "He is stable, Supreme Commander," one of the medics said, not looking up. The title. It sounded different now. It sounded real. Jack nodded, the knot of panic in his chest easing by a fraction. He turned back to the command console. "Helm, what is our status?" "Auxiliary power only, sir," a technician replied, her voice shaking. "The main engines are dead. The reactor, it is gone. We are adrift. But the hull is intact. And the fleet? The fleet is watching us, sir." They saw the explosion. They saw the rebel fleet destroyed. They are awaiting orders. Jack looked at the tactical map. It was a sea of blue icons, his fleet, all clustered around the new, swirling nebula. They were all looking at the flagship, waiting to see if it was alive, waiting for a sign. He walked to the main communications array. He looked at Jaren. She was still standing by her broken throne, watching him. She was not moving. She was not speaking. She was letting him do this. She was letting him take it. This was the moment, the true transfer of power, not the ceremony, not the title. This, the wreckage, the choice. He hit the fleet-wide broadcast. "This is Supreme Commander Harrison." His voice, raw and human, echoed across the comms of 1,000 ships. "The rebellion is over. Valerius and Calrex are dead. Their fleet is gone." He paused. He could feel the entire fleet listening. General Calrex was a traitor. He was in league with the rebels. His final act was to sabotage this flagship, to deliver the Empress and the command staff to our enemies. He failed. He looked at the new nebula, the scar he had left on the galaxy. "We are victorious, but we are wounded. The flagship is crippled. I want status reports from every admiral. I want search and rescue teams in the debris field, looking for any loyalist pods. I want a perimeter established. We have won the war. Now, we secure the peace." He shut off the comm. He turned to the 4 mutinous admirals, who were now being disarmed by Jaren's personal guard. "Take them to the brig, all of them. They will face a tribunal for high treason." "Yes, Supreme Commander," the guard captain said, with no hesitation. The bridge was a flurry of new, focused activity. The panic was gone, replaced by purpose. Jack had given it to them. He was alone again, in the center of the storm. He walked back to Jaren. She had not moved. "You are good at that," she said, her voice quiet, almost neutral. "I am just a pilot," he said. the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I am used to giving orders in a crisis." "No," she said. "A pilot gives orders to a machine. You just gave orders to an empire." They listened. He looked at her, the betrayal rising up again, cold and bitter. "You lied to me. You let me believe I was some omen, some chosen one. You let me be a fool." "I did," she said, her voice flat. There was no apology, no defense, just the fact. "Tyrus was your choice, your real choice. I was just the first body that washed ashore." "General Tyrus is dead," Jaren said, her voice hardening. "He was a good man, a loyal man, a Zilth, and Calrex killed him, because he was predictable, because Calrex knew exactly what he would do. You." She looked at him, her obsidian eyes sweeping over his blood-stained, human form. "You, he could not predict. You were an accident. You were a variable he could not solve. You were the one thing in the galaxy he did not understand. And that is what saved us." She took a step toward him. "I did not lie to you, Jack Harrison. I used you. Just as I use this crown. Just as I use my admirals. Just as I use this fleet. You were a weapon, and I aimed you. I will not apologize for that. I am an Empress. It is what I do." Jack stared at her. The raw, brutal honesty of it was almost more intimate than the moment in the conduit. "And now?" he asked, his voice low. "And now?" Jaren said. "The weapon has proven effective. The war is over, but the Empire is broken. Calrex was not alone. He had allies on Zilth Prime, political allies. They are still there. The fleet is shattered. The command structure is in ashes. Half my admirals are traitors. The other half are dead." She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that was not calculation or anger. It was weariness. It was need. "I am an Empress with no army," she whispered. "And you are a commander with no rank, a hero with no home. We are a problem for each other." "So what happens now?" Jack asked. "Now," she said, "we rebuild together." She held his gaze. "You have the fleet. They just heard you. You are their voice. You are the Firebringer, the Void Reaper. They fear you. They respect you. You are more powerful today than any Zilth general has been in 1,000 years." "I am not a Zilth," he said stubbornly. "I am painfully aware of that," she said, a faint, dry humor touching her voice. "That is why it will work." The following weeks were a slow, grinding hell. The flagship was towed back to the main Imperial shipyard, a wounded giant. Jack's first order was for the full honors burial of Sergeant Aaron. Except Aaron was not dead. Jack stood in the gleaming white medical bay, looking at the big, scarred Zilth who was now sitting up, his chest swathed in synthetic skin. "Commander!" Aaron rumbled. His voice was weak, but it was alive. "Aaron," Jack said, a wave of relief so profound it made him dizzy. The doctors said you..." "The projectile was primitive," Aaron said, touching his chest. "It shattered the armor, but the biofoam sealed the wound. My hearts are strong." He looked at Jack. "You stayed. On the bridge. You did not run." "You were there," Jack said simply. "You took the shot." "It is my duty, sir," Aaron said. "To protect the Supreme Commander." Jack looked at the sergeant. I am not what you think I am, Aaron." Aaron smiled, a rare, craggy expression. "Sir, I have served 3 Supreme Commanders. One was a politician. One was a butcher. You are a pilot. You see the field. You do not care about honor. Only the solution. It is refreshing. He paused. And you saved us. That is all I need to know. Jack's next visit was to the brig. Ben was in a comfort cell, which was still a sterile, white box. He was pale, thin, and he flinched when Jack walked in. "Ben," Jack said gently. "Sir," Ben whispered, shrinking back. "Commander." It is just Jack. Ben, it is over. They said you—" Ben was trembling. "They said you were a spy. They showed me things, logs, the medical ships, all those people." "It was a lie." "Ben," Jack said, kneeling in front of him. "Calrex faked it. All of it. He was the traitor. He was working with the rebels." Ben looked at him, his eyes wide and haunted. He said you had ordered me, processed, that you gave them permission." Jack's blood ran cold. "What? They put me in a machine. Jack, a mind reader. They took everything. About Earth, about the fleet, about the button, the coffee. They know. They know it was an accident." Ben started to weep, quiet, racking sobs. "I am sorry, I am so sorry. I told them everything." Jack felt a wave of cold fury, deeper than anything he had felt for Calrex. He put his hand on Ben's shoulder. "This was not your fault. This was Calrex. He used you. He used me. It is over. You are safe." "Am I?" Ben looked at him, his eyes full of a new, different kind of fear. "You are one of them now. You are the Supreme Commander. They all look at you like you are a god. You are not Jack anymore." And in that moment, Jack knew it was true. The last tie to his old life, his old self, was broken. Ben would never see him as just Jack again. He was the commander. He was the alien. "I will have you sent home, Ben," Jack said, his voice quiet. "I will find a ship. I will tell them. I will tell them you were a hero, that you were captured." "Home," Ben whispered, the word like a prayer. He looked at Jack. And you." Jack stood up. He looked at his new, Zilth-uniformed reflection in the polished wall. I do not think I have a home anymore." The tribunals were brutal. Jack presided over them himself, with Jarin sitting at his side, a silent, golden symbol of his authority. The 4 mutinous admirals were the first. They confessed. They had been loyal to Calrex, but they had believed his lies. They had not known he was a double agent. Jack listened to their pleas, his face impassible. "You took an oath," Jack said, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. "Not to a general. You took it to the Empress. You betrayed her. You mutinied. You turned your weapons on your fellow officers. You are guilty." Jarin had argued for their execution. "It is the Zilth way," she had insisted in private. "No," Jack had countered, their first real argument. "It is the old way. It is Calrex's way. We do not need martyrs. We need examples." In the chamber, he rendered his verdict. "You will not be executed. You will be stripped of rank. You will serve, for the rest of your lives, as common crewmen on the waste scows of the Outer Rim. You will live, every day, with your shame, and you will tell every person you meet who you were, and what you lost." The sentence was, to the Zilth, a fate worse than death. It was a sentence of pure, cold humiliation, and it was brilliant. The fleet understood it. It was a commander's justice, not a butcher's. From that day on, Jack's authority was absolute. He and Jaren worked. They worked from sunrise to sunrise. They were a team. He was the logic. She was the power. He was the pilot. She was the Empress. He found the traitors in the political class. The ones Vera, his new intelligence chief, rooted out. He dealt with the supply lines. He redesigned the fleet, creating smaller, faster, smarter ships, pilot ships. And she held the empire together. She used his victories as a shield, his reputation as a club. She made speeches. She silenced dissent. She was, in every way, his partner. The distance between them blurred. They were rarely in their own quarters. They spent most nights in the war room, poring over maps, not of battles, but of trade routes and political alliances. The other empires, the Signian and the Cathal, were, as she predicted, testing their borders. They saw weakness. One night, after a grueling 18-hour session dealing with a Signian blockade, Jack was slumped over the holographic table, rubbing his temples. Jaren was on the other side, watching him. "You are exhausted," she said. It was a simple observation. "I am a pilot," he murmured. "I am used to short bursts of terror. Not this. Endless. Grinding. Politics. It is going to kill me faster than Calrex ever could." She walked around the table. She stood behind him. He did not tense. He was used to her presence. She was the one constant in his new, insane life. Her hands, long and pale, settled on his shoulders. He flinched, but she did not move. Her touch was firm, grounding. She began to wordlessly massage the knotted muscles in his neck. It was a gesture so unexpected, so profoundly human, that he did not know what to do. You do not have to do that, Your Majesty," he stammered. "Be quiet, Jack," she murmured, her voice losing its regal edge, becoming something softer. "You are carrying an empire. It is a heavy burden. You are the one carrying it," he said. I am just the guy who fixes the engines." "You are the engine," she said, her fingers finding a knot of tension and working it, ruthlessly. "Without you, it all stops. I stop." He turned his head, looking up at her. She was so close. The scent of her, that strange, metallic, rain-on-stone scent. It was no longer alien. It was just her. "Jaren," he said, his voice low. "I know," she whispered. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid. The lie about Tyrus. The battle. The shared survival. The long nights. It was not love. Love was too simple a word. It was an alliance, a bond, a dependency, a raw, undeniable connection forged in fire. "The Signian ambassador arrives in 2 days," she said, her hands stilling on his shoulders. "He will not trust me. He sees a weak Empress, a broken fleet. He will demand concessions." "I will be there," Jack said. "He will see you," she said, "as the human who controls the throne, the alien puppet master. It is what Calrex wanted." "I am not a puppet master," Jack said, turning in his chair to face her. He took her hands. They were cold. "And you are not weak. We are the new way. You said it yourself." "They will not understand," she said. "Then we will make them understand," he said. He stood up. He was still shorter than her, but for the first time, they were eye to eye. They were equals. "This is not easy," she said, her gaze dropping to his hands, holding hers. This, us, it is. Dangerous. Politically, everything we do is dangerous, Jack said. We aimed a sun at your fleet. We tore down your command structure. We are the most dangerous thing in this galaxy. Together. He looked at her, at this impossible, beautiful, terrifying woman. He was not a pilot. He was not a fraud. He was her commander. And she was his Empress. In my world, he said softly, we have a saying. You break it, you buy it. A faint, beautiful, real smile touched her lips. And what did you break, Jack Harrison? Everything, he whispered. I broke everything. Good, she replied, her hands tightening in his. Then it is ours to rebuild. They both knew, in that moment, that this was not about love. It was about survival. It was about power. And in the cold, dark void of the Zilth Empire, that was the only thing they could truly rely on. The Cygnian ambassador arrived 2 days later. He was a tall, avian creature named Xylos, with feathers of iridescent blue and eyes that moved with a sharp, bird-like nervousness. He carried the air of a man who had come to pick over the bones of a dying lion. The meeting was held in the High Chamber, the first formal diplomatic event since the flagship's repair. The room was cold, all polished black stone and gold inlay. Jaren sat on the Empress's throne, which had been salvaged and restored. She was in full regalia, a vision of golden, untouchable power. Jack Harrison stood at her right hand, just below the dais. He wore the new Supreme Commander's uniform, a severe, high-collared tunic of black, with the same gold piping as her own. It was a deliberate, calculated statement. They were a matched set. Empress, Ambassador Xylos chirped, his translator turning the sound into smooth, oily words. We are relieved to see you have survived your internal difficulties. The Cygnian hegemony was most distressed to hear of the traitor Calrex's deplorable actions, and his unfortunate end. The traitor met the fate he deserved, Jaren said, her voice like ice. The Zilth Empire is stronger for his removal. Of course, Xylos said, ruffling his feathers. He glanced at Jack, a dismissive, assessing look. And yet, you must understand our position. The rebellion, while crushed, has left your fleet diminished. Your trade routes are vulnerable. Your borders are tested. He leaned forward. My people require assurances, guarantees, perhaps a new treaty, granting us stewardship over the Orion trade sector to ensure its stability. It was a power play, a blatant, insulting land grab, dressed up as concerned assistance. Jaren's hand tightened on the arm of her throne. Jack could feel the rage coming off her in waves. The old Zilth response would be to threaten war, to execute the ambassador. But they both knew their fleet was in no position to fight a new enemy. Jaren looked at Jack, a tiny, almost imperceptible glance. Your move, Commander. Jack stepped forward. He did not speak to the ambassador. He spoke to the tactical map that was hovering in the air beside them. The Orion sector, Jack said, his voice quiet, conversational. The ambassador looked annoyed at being addressed by the human. It is a complex shipping lane. You have, 300 patrol craft in that sector? Ambassador Xylos looked startled. Our fleet strength is not a matter for 324, Jack corrected, his eyes on the map. Mostly light frigates, slow, overarmed, bad sensor arrays. They are designed for policing, not for fighting. A pilot's nightmare. Too much mass for their thrusters. He tapped a control. The map zoomed in. My predecessor, General Calrex, was a hammer. He would have met your request by sending a fleet of battleships. It would have been bloody. It would have been predictable. Jack turned his head, slowly, and looked at the ambassador for the first time. Jack's eyes were cold. "I," he said, "am not General Calrex." He tapped the map again. "I will not send a battleship. I will send 3 ships. A new class we have just commissioned. Reaper class. Very small. Very fast. Piloted by my personal guard." He smiled. A thin, cold expression that was not humorous at all. "They are unconventional. They do not use plasma. They use gravity distortion. They will fold your 300 frigates into small, very dense pieces of scrap metal, and you will never even see them." The ambassador's blue feathers paled to a sickly white. This is a threat. This is barbarism." "No," Jack said. "It is logistics. It is a pilot solution. It is clean, efficient, bloodless. From my perspective, you see, Ambassador, you have misunderstood the last few months. You think because we had a civil war, we are weak. You are wrong. We had a cleansing. We trimmed the fat. The slow ships are gone. The slow admirals are gone. The predictable strategies are gone." He stepped back, taking his place beside Jaren. "The Zilth Empire is not weaker. It is faster. It is smarter. And it is very, very tired of being tested. Now, about that treaty." He looked at Xylos. "I believe we will be requiring stewardship of your primary fueling depots at Xylos Prime. As assurance of your continued stability. Of course." The ambassador stared. He looked at Jack, the alien commander. He looked at Jaren, the golden, silent Empress who had just let her alien commander threaten his entire nation. He saw, in that moment, not a broken empire, but a new, terrifying partnership. I must consult with my government," Xylos stammered, bowing. "You do that," Jack said. The ambassador fled. When the doors hissed shut, the room was silent for a long moment. Jaren did not move. "Reaper class," she finally asked, her voice dry. Jack shrugged. "I was just spitballing, but our engineers could probably build it. Gravity distortion sounds impressive. Do not you think?" A sound startled him. A small, strange, breathy exhale. He turned. Jaren was laughing. It was not a laugh of triumph. It was a quiet, genuine, weary laugh of pure relief. "Fold them into scrap," she murmured, shaking her head. "You are terrible, Jack Harrison, utterly terrible." "I am efficient," he corrected, a small smile touching his own lips. "You said it yourself. It is what you like about me." "It is," she agreed, her laughter fading. She stood, descending from the throne. The moment of state was over. The moment of them had begun. "Come, walk with me. I am tired of this room." They found themselves, as they often did, on the great observation deck. The flagship was fully repaired. The crystal dome a perfect, seamless window onto the infinite. The new nebula, Calrex's Pyre, as the crew had grimly named it, was a faint, beautiful smear of violet and blue in the distance. They stood in comfortable silence for a long time, just watching the stars. This was their new normal. This strange, quiet partnership. They were the 2 loneliest people in the galaxy, and in a way, the only 2 people who were not alone at all. "I received a message," Jack said, his voice low. "From Earth." Jaren turned her head. "Oh, Ben, my co-pilot. He made it home. The ship I sent him on, it arrived." "He is fortunate," she said. Jack looked out at the void. "Is he? They do not know what to do with him. His own government. He is changed. He saw too much. He knows too much. They have him in a comfortable quarantine. He is a hero and a prisoner. He does not belong there anymore. He paused, the admission costing him. He is like me. We do not belong anywhere. Jarin was quiet. She moved to stand beside him, her shoulder almost touching his. You belong here. Do I? He asked, a trace of the old, bitter irony in his voice. I am still the pilot who hit the wrong button. I am still the Terran, the alien, the fraud. No, she said, her voice firm. She reached out, not to his shoulder, but to his hand. Her fingers, long and cold, wrapped around his. It was a gesture of profound, shocking intimacy. The man who faced Calrex in that archive was not a fraud. The man who flew this ship into a reactor breach was not a fraud. The man who just terrified the Cygnian ambassador into submission was not a fraud. She met his gaze, her obsidian eyes holding his. That man was the Supreme Commander. And what about Jack? He whispered, his voice raw. The pilot. The one who just wanted a good cup of coffee. He is the man. I trust, she said, her voice so low he barely heard it. The air thrummed between them. The confession hung in the silence. Trust. In her world, it was a word more precious and more dangerous than love. Is that enough, Jarin? He asked, his voice aching with the weight of it all. Trust, look at us. You are an Empress. I am your general. That power is always here. It is always between us. It is the only reason I am here. How can anything else even exist? He was thinking of Tyrus. He was thinking of the lie, the cold, political calculation that had started all of this. I do not know, she said, and her honesty was as sharp as a blade. I do not know if it is enough. I do not know what. This is. I am an Empress. You are my commander. That is the truth. She turned her hand, lacing her fingers with his. But I also know that you are Jack, and I am Jarin, and we are the only two people in this galaxy who know what it is to be us. I do not want to be in that throne room. I want to be here, with you. Is that enough? He looked at their joined hands. Her, the alien Empress. Him, the human pilot, bound by lies, by fire, by blood, and by a strange, desperate, shared survival. It was not love. It was something more complex, something harder. It will have to be, he whispered, a chime, not a siren, not an alarm, a polite, urgent, electronic summons. Jack sighed, his eyes closing for a moment. The moment of peace was broken. It was always broken. The bridge, Commander, the calm voice of the ship's computer said. The new intelligence chief, Vera, request your presence. It is urgent. Jarin dropped his hand, and in an instant, they were the Empress and the Commander again. The masks snapped back into place. Vera does not use the word urgent lightly, she said, her voice all steel. They strode to the bridge. It was the new bridge, the one Jack had redesigned. It was darker, more efficient. A true pilot's command center. Vera, a tall, severe Zilth female with sharp eyes, was at the main display, her face grim. Sergeant Aaron, fully recovered and never more than 6 feet from Jack, stood at parade rest, his scarred face impassive. Empress, Commander, Vera said, her voice clipped. An event, 6 hours ago, on the Cathal border. The Cathal, Jarin said, annoyed. Are they testing the borders again? I thought your Reaper threat would have kept them quiet. They are not testing the borders. Empress, Vera said. She hit a control. The main screen, which had been showing the peaceful starfield, changed. It showed nothing. A patch of blackness where a Zilth border listening post was supposed to be. "Where is the station?" Jack asked, stepping forward. "That is the sensor log from 1 second ago," Vera said, her voice tight. "This is the log from 2 seconds ago." The image flashed. The station was there, intact. Then, a distortion. A ripple in space. The station, it did not explode. It did not vaporize. It looked like it was crushed. Like a giant, invisible hand had simply squeezed it into a pinpoint of matter. Jack's blood ran cold. What kind of weapon does that? "We do not know, Commander," Vera said. "But it is fast. 3 hours ago, they erased the Orion system." "The Orion system," Jarin protested. "That is a colony. 3 populated worlds. It would take a fleet of—" "It was one ship, Empress," Vera said, bringing up a long-range, grainy image. It was a shape. A vast, geometric, pitch-black vessel. It looked less like a ship and more like a hole in space. It had no engines, no weapons. It just was. And as they watched, a ripple of gravimetric force pulsed from it, and a small moon orbiting one of the Orion worlds cracked in half. The bridge was a tomb. "They waited," Jarin whispered, her voice trembling with a new, cold fury. "They waited for our civil war to end. They waited until we were at our weakest. Until we were vulnerable." Jack stared at the screen. He saw the new, impossible enemy. He saw the new, impossible weapon. He felt the weight of the new, impossible war settling onto his shoulders. He was not a pilot. He was not a fraud. He was the supreme commander of a broken fleet, allied to a desperate Empress. And he was the only thing standing between this new, terrible darkness and the entire Zilth Empire. He looked at Jarin. She was watching him, her face pale, but her eyes full of fire. She was terrified, and she was ready. She trusted him. He realized, with a profound, weary, and hopeless certainty, that his life would never be simple. He would never get home. He would never just be Jack again. He let out a long, slow breath. He straightened his new, perfect uniform. He turned to the helm. "Well," Jack Harrison said, his voice quiet, but it carried across the entire bridge. "It is a Tuesday. I always hated Tuesdays." Sergeant Aaron, standing at his side, permitted himself the smallest ghost of a smile. "A terrible day, Commander." Jack looked at the dark, geometric nightmare on his screen. He looked at Jarin, and she gave him a single, powerful nod. It was all the confirmation he needed. He was hers, and she was his. And this was theirs to fix. "Helm," Jack said, his voice full of the quiet, steel authority he had spent a war earning. "Set a course for the Orion system. Maximum engagement speed." He turned, looking at his crew. They were all watching him. No fear, no doubt, just readiness. "And somebody," he said, a faint trace of the old, sarcastic pilot in his voice. "Somebody get me a coffee, a hot one, this time. It is going to be a very, very long day."